One afternoon, Ethan invited Neo over for gaming. "Come," he said to Neo after practice. Neo looked up. "Where?" "Games. Just come." Pause. Anaya looked between them. Ethan added, "You've been sitting in that room like it's a prison. Let's fix that." Neo hesitated, then stood. The gaming room was loud, bright, and nothing like the arts building. At first, Neo didn't fit. He stood near the edge, unsure where to place his hands, his presence, himself. Ethan noticed, so he handed him a controller. "Just try." Neo tried. He lost immediately. Ethan laughed, but not mockingly. More like relief. "Again," he said. They played. Again and again. Neo got better. Not fast, but steady. The kind of steady people don't notice until it becomes dangerous. Anaya showed up halfway through, leaning against the doorway. "You dragged him here?" she asked Ethan. "He needed it," Ethan replied. Neo didn't look away from the screen. "I didn't say that." "But you're smiling," Anaya said quietly. That made him pause, because she was right. Something changed after that day. Not loudly, not suddenly, but consistently. Anaya stopped sitting alone, even when people still talked, even when her old friends stopped inviting her places altogether. She didn't chase them. She just stopped shrinking, and somehow she stood taller with them beside her. Group work stopped being chaotic. It became structured. Ethan handled leadership like he was born for it, direct, confident, efficient. Anaya refined everything, slides, visuals, delivery, turning their work into something that looked almost professional. Neo built the foundation, quietly, carefully, fixing what no one else saw. He started speaking more in meetings, short sentences, but precise ones. And every time he spoke, even Ethan listened a little more carefully. Then came the presentation day. The room was full, too full. Anaya felt it the moment she stepped on stage, the weight of expectation and judgment and curiosity. She glanced sideways. Ethan gave a subtle nod. Neo adjusted the slides, and they began. It wasn't just good. It was undeniable. Ethan spoke like control itself, clear, commanding. Anaya spoke like conviction, measured, powerful, composed. Neo spoke like truth, quiet, but impossible to ignore. By the end, the room wasn't just watching them. It was reacting to them. Nods, silence, then applause. Real applause. The kind that doesn't feel polite, feels earned. Backstage, Anaya exhaled for the first time like she had been holding her breath for weeks. Ethan leaned back against the wall. "We didn't mess it up." Neo gave a small nod. "We didn't." Anaya looked at them both, at the two people she was never supposed to belong with. Then she said softly, "They're still talking about me, you know?" Ethan shrugged. "Let them." Neo added, "They'll stop when they run out of things to say." Pause. Then Anaya smiled. Small. Real. "Good," she said, "because I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time, none of them felt like they were either. The weeks after the presentation didn't go back to normal. They went forward, quietly, in a way that changed everything without announcing it. Anaya's results came first. She didn't expect anything unusual when the semester results were released. She had always been good, consistent, careful, fine. But this time was different. When she opened the portal, she stared at the screen for a long moment, then checked it again, then again. All distinctions, not just good, exceptional. For a moment, she didn't even smile. It felt unreal, like someone had mistakenly placed another student's name on her record, until her phone rang. Her mother. "I saw it," her mother said immediately, voice full of pride she didn't even try to hide. "Anaya, this is excellent, truly excellent." A pause. Then her father came on the line, calmer, but clearly pleased. "We are proud of you," he said. "Very proud." Anaya sat down slowly on her bed, still staring at the results. "Thank you," she said softly. "I worked hard." "I can see that," her father replied. "But there is something else. You sound different lately." That made her pause. different. She glanced at herself in the mirror. "I've been studying with people," she said carefully. "People?" her mother asked. Anaya hesitated. Then she told them about the arts building room, about the arguments, about the strange beginning that didn't feel important at all. And then, more quietly, about Neo, about Ethan, about how things changed when There was a silence on the line. Then her father spoke. "And these friends? They treat you well?" Anaya didn't answer immediately, not because she didn't know, but because she did. "Yes," she said finally. "They do." She hesitated again, then added, "But not everyone likes it." Her mother's voice softened. "What do you mean?" Anaya leaned back. "My old friends. They started ignoring me," she said, "because I spend time with them." "With who?" She exhaled. "One of them is Neo. People think he's beneath me." Her father's tone changed slightly. "Beneath you?" Anaya nodded even though they couldn't see her. "He's not rich. He doesn't act like the rest of them. So they call him low class." Her voice tightened a little. "But he's the reason my grades improved." Silence again. Then her father said something slower this time. "And the other?" "A wealthy student," she replied. "Ethan." That part surprised them more than Neo. Anaya continued. "He doesn't act like it though. He doesn't use it. He just shows up for people." Her mother let out a soft breath. "And you're happy?" Anaya didn't hesitate this time. "Yes, that was enough." The next weekend, but as curiosity, and something closer to approval than they were willing to admit out loud. Ethan arrived first. Clean shirt, calm posture, the kind of presence that made wealth obvious even when he didn't speak. Anaya noticed the moment her parents saw him. They didn't react with surprise, more like recognition. Her father shook his hand firmly. "So," he said, "you're the one helping my daughter excel." Ethan smiled slightly. "She did most of the work." Her mother nodded approvingly. "We like humility." Ethan glanced at Anaya briefly. "That's new," she whispered. He smirked. "I contain multitudes." Then Neo arrived, a little slower, a little more careful. He stood at the edge of the space for a second longer than necessary, like he was calculating whether he belonged there at all. Anaya noticed. So did her parents. But her father did something unexpected. He stepped forward first. "Come in," he said simply. No hesitation, no judgment, just invitation. Neo walked in. The conversation that followed wasn't formal. It was real. Her parents asked questions. Neo answered honestly. Ethan filled in gaps when needed. Anaya mostly watched. And for the first time, she saw something clearly. They weren't from the same world, but they were building a shared one anyway. Later, after they left, Anaya's father stayed behind with her on the balcony. The evening air was calm. "I misjudged something," he said. Anaya looked at him. "What?" He folded his arms. "I assumed your success was only academic." She frowned slightly. He continued, "But it's also environmental. The people around you matter." Pause. Then softer. "That boy Neo, he is not beneath anyone. He is focused. That is rare." Anaya's chest loosened a little. Her father rarely spoke like that. Not about people. Not like this. On the other side of the city, Neo stood in a small living room holding his results slip. His mother read it twice, then a third time. Then she sat down slowly, pressing a hand to her chest. "You did this?" she asked, voice shaking slightly. Neo nodded. She laughed softly, half disbelief, half pride. "My son," she whispered. "My son is excelling." She stood and pulled him into a hug that lasted longer than he expected. "You are not invisible," she said firmly. "Not to me. Never to me." Neo didn't say anything, but his eyes softened, because for a long time, he had believed success was something other people got to define for him. Now it was sitting in his mother's hands. Real. Undeniable. Back at school, things didn't return to how they were before. Because they couldn't. People still talked. But the tone changed. Less mocking. More uncertain. Less dismissal, more recognition. Anaya walked through campus one morning and didn't lower her head. Neo walked beside her. Ethan met them at the gate. No one stopped them anymore, not because people approved, but because they had stopped looking like something that could be broken apart. That afternoon, they returned to the arts building room one last time. The same dusty table, the same quiet corners, but it felt different now. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "We started here by accident." Anaya smiled. "It felt like a mistake." Neo nodded. "It wasn't." Silence. Not awkward this time, just full. Anaya looked at both of them, at everything that had shifted without permission, without warning, and she said softly, "I think this is the first time I've felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Ethan nodded once. Neo didn't speak, but he didn't need to, because for the first time, none of them were outsiders anymore. The years didn't just pass. They refined them, like pressure turning something uncertain into something unbreakable. By graduation day, the campus looked different to all three of them. Same buildings, same paths, but nothing felt the same anymore. Because this time, they didn't walk in as strangers forced into a room. They walked in as something the university had no words for at first, until it finally settled on one: exceptional. The ceremony hall was full. Families filled every row. Wealthy, modest, proud, nervous, silent in anticipation. But when the first award was announced, everyone understood something important. This year wasn't about background. It was about becoming. Top Academic Excellence Award. The name echoed across the hall. Anaya. She stood still for half a second, then walked. Not the hesitant girl who once worried about being judged, but someone who had learned that discipline is louder than opinion. When she received the award, her hands didn't shake, but her eyes briefly searched the crowd and found them, Neo, Ethan, and her parents standing behind them, smiling like this moment belonged to all of them, because in a way it did. Outstanding Leadership and Innovation Award. Ethan's name followed. He stepped forward with the same quiet confidence he had always carried, but now it was no longer misunderstood. It was respected. He accepted the award, then turned slightly toward the audience. "I used to think leadership was control," he said into the mic. A pause, then a small smile. "Now I know it's responsibility." His eyes met Neo's briefly. A nod passed between them. No words needed. Then came the moment the hall softened into silence. Special recognition for academic transformation and research excellence. Neo's name. For a second, he didn't move. Not because he was unsure, but because he remembered where he started. The boy who once sat at the back of rooms. The boy people measured before they listened. He stood, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath as he walked forward. Anaya clapped first. Ethan followed immediately. Then the entire room rose with them. When Neo reached the stage, the applause didn't feel like noise. It felt like correction. A rewriting of every assumption that had ever been made about him. He took the award, paused, then spoke simply. "I didn't come from privilege," he said. A silence fell deeper. "But I came from possibility." He looked out. "At some point, I stopped asking if I belonged. I started asking what I could build." A beat, then softly, "And I didn't build alone." His eyes found Anaya, then Ethan. And that made all the difference. The hall erupted. After the ceremony, something rare happened. Not a celebration, convergence. Families met in the courtyard outside the hall. Anaya's parents, Ethan's parents, and Neo's mother. At first, it felt like different worlds colliding, but no one acted like they didn't belong. Anaya's father stepped forward first. He shook Neo's mother's hand warmly. "You raised a remarkable young man," he said. Her eyes filled immediately. "And I can see where he got his strength," he added gently. Ethan's parents joined in, speaking with the same respect. There was no distance, no hierarchy, only recognition, and something stronger than wealth, human dignity. What followed surprised even Neo. With quiet agreement between the families, opportunities were created not as charity, but as investment in someone they all believed in. Neo's mother was supported in establishing a community learning and mentorship center, something she had always dreamed of but never had the means to start. Now she didn't just have means. She had partners who refused to let her dreams stay small. Years passed, but this time they didn't drift apart. They expanded. Ethan built a name in leadership and innovation, becoming someone known for building systems that included people instead of excluding them. He eventually married Anaya's sister, a relationship that started in shared conversations about purpose, not status. A marriage built on understanding, not image. Anaya became a respected academic and strategist, known for her clarity, her discipline, and her ability to bring order to complexity. But more importantly, she never returned to shrinking herself for anyone. Not once. And Neo became something people once said he would never be. Not because he proved them wrong, but because he never needed their permission to be right. He grew into a researcher and leader in educational reform, someone who helped redefine how talent is recognized, especially in places where it had always been overlooked. And in every achievement, there was always one constant. He never walked alone again. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, Anaya and Neo found each other again. Not in urgency, not in confusion, but in certainty that had taken years to form. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was the kind of love that grows from respect, survival, shared struggle, and quiet understanding. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself, only sustain itself. Years later, people would talk about them differently, not as three students who were forced together, but as three lives that proved something the world often forgets: that excellence is not inherited, it is built. That friendship is not about similarity, it is about loyalty in difference. And that love, real love, doesn't rise from convenience. It rises from seeing someone fully and still choosing them. And when people asked how it all started, Anaya would smile slightly and say, "It started in a dusty room nobody cared about." Ethan would add, "And stayed there just long enough for us to become who we were meant to be." Neo would simply say, "It didn't feel important at first." A pause, then softly, "But it was the beginning of everything."